Hi everyone. In this video, what I want to be showing is how to identify domain controller in an Active Directory penetration testing. I struggled with it a lot when I started my penetration testing. It was a question that was on my mind for a very long time. How can I get to identify domain controller immediately during penetration testing? So I've gotten how to do that, and that is what I want to show you. So I'm going to be using Gold Game of Active Directory as my lab here, and I want you to just take note of this domain controller one. In this domain, we have 3 domains here. We have the 7 kingdoms, we have the source, we have the North 7 kingdom. So in this lab, in this environment, this domain, we need to identify the domain controller. If you're in a domain, you need to identify the domain controller that is servicing that domain, and the same thing here. But I want you to take note of this IP.10.12, which is the domain controller, and .11. So let's get started. So I am on my Kali now. So in order for you to identify the domain controller in a network, the first thing you need to do, okay, as part of it, is you can make use of the net BIOS details, right? And that is what we are going to do first. So we can use crackmapexec, or we can use netexec. So let's use crackmapexec first. So let's say crack map, okay, exec. Then we use SMB. We do SMB, and the IP block 192.168.56.0/24. So let's see. Okay, so we can see by default, okay, the domain controller within an environment will be signed. We have SMB signed, okay. This is also SMB sign is true, and then this is also SMB signing true. So we can guess that these are the domain controllers, right? You see, you can say this IP is a domain controller in the environment. Then this is also a domain controller in an environment. Then this King's Landing is a domain controller in an environment. But the question is, what if you have another, you have a very large network and you still want to be sure of what the domain controller is? Okay, so before we go to that, I think netexec is very is a little bit it has coloring, so that I can use netexec for this. Netexec, again, SMB, the same 192.168.56 0/24. It has coloration, so we can see it very well. So SMB sign is true. So Windows domain controller comes with SMB signing true by default, so we can use this to identify it. But where I'm going again is something that we can do that is very, very interesting to make us to be very sure when you are in a large network. So the next thing that we are going to do is to be very sure again, right? So we can use ns lookup. Okay, and what we are going to do, we can start with we can pick any of the domain, any of the one that we guess can be the domain controller. Okay, for instance, I want to guess, I know these three that having SMV signing through can be the domain controller. Okay, so I'm going to pick the IP address of one of them. For instance, in this domain, this source.local, right? I want to query this IP, this domain, this my potential domain controller. I want to query to find out, okay, what is the domain controller? Since they're in the same network, what is the domain controller on this domain? Okay, so I'm going to make use of this command, very simple command. I'm just going to copy it so that it's not. And what I'm doing here is that I'm asking this domain controller, my potential domain controller, if it is not a domain controller, it will not give me. If domain controller service is not running on this IP, I won't get any response. So I'm saying that in this domain, I'm asking this domain controller, this IP, to give me the domain controller in this network. Okay, so let's do that now. It's ns lookup, the type is service, and we are looking for LDAP service that is a domain controller. So I can just press enter. So it's responded to me. I have that, okay, the IP address of the domain controller in this domain is this. So by that, you have been able to get the IP address of the domain controller in that domain. So we can look for the one for King's Landing too. Let's say King's Landing. We can use the same IP address. Let's look for North Seven Kingdoms domain. Let's look for the North domain. So I'm going to change this domain North.7 Kingdoms. Okay, so I'm going to press enter. So can you see that the IP address of the domain controller here is 11. So now let me go to the third one, and that is the 7 Kingdoms, and I will use the same IP address. Yeah, if you remember that I'm using the IP address of the domain controller of 7 Kingdoms itself. So I want to query the domain controller of 7 Kingdoms itself. So the answer that is going to give me is going to be different, but I'll still explain. Okay, so now it's not giving me any IP address because I'm querying the domain controller itself, but it's giving me the full what's it called, the fully qualified domain name of the domain controller. So this is the name of the machine, King's Landing, and this is the full fully qualified domain of that machine. So it's just very, very simple. And one last thing that I want to show you again is, what if the machine that you pick is not a domain controller, that the DNS is not running on that machine? Then you won't get any answer. For instance, let's make use of this Bravos, right? Bravos is 23. That's the IP address 23. And then let me change the IP address to 23. And then the answer will be it will take time, and it will even come back with error, communication error, timeout, because the service LDAP service is not DNS service is not running on this machine, and that is the reason why we are getting error. So that's just the simple way that you can identify a domain controller within a network when you are doing penetration testing. So thank you very much. If this video has really benefited you, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support this channel for more. Thank you, and have a good day.